It is 7, and we won't start the program immediately. A lot of people still have to come in. So I think we'll make a few announcements right now first. The first announcement is you're going to see in the chat box that I didn't explain it, but I put an address that's Bitterroot Trout Unlimited. And you guys might want to take a screenshot of that or take a picture with your phone, because they are giving away some nice Swarovski binoculars. And so you can go to that site and sign up. So be sure to take a picture of that address. Okay?
But I started thinking and tried to remember.
One thing I'm going to ask everybody to do is mute themselves, and to, as soon as Denver starts talking, stop your video, because it's better for everybody's bandwidth if people don't have their video on. Okay. Membership renewals. If you have not renewed to Bitterroot Audubon yet this year, if you're just doing the local membership of $15, please do it as soon as possible. Thank you. All right. Kate, do you want to make an announcement about our t-shirts?
Sure, I'd love to. I turned my light down because it was too bright, but many of you know we've got Bitterroot Audubon t-shirts again. It's been decades, kind of. So the art on our shirts, you can kind of see fitting with the owl theme. The art was donated by Karen Savory. So please thank her, support Simply Savory Art. Karen, thank you so much. And these shirts are similar in style and sizing to the Winter Eagle shirts, if you remember those from a few years ago. They're a 60-40 blend, unisex sizing, and you can go to our website to see a sizing chart. They're $20. You can purchase them through the website, and we'll either deliver them or mail them to you. We don't have any rolls. Sorry. I'm going to mute some people here. Or if you want to, you can also send us a check and your sizing info to our P.O. box. That info is also on the website. If you're interested in maybe being a distributor or maybe selling, if you do a lot of driving through the valley or you see a lot of people, just send me a message in the chat, or, you can email me or call me after the meeting tonight. So thanks.
Thank you, Kate. These shirts, can you hear me? I'm not showing up though, isn't it? At least I can still see. I was going to show that I have my shirt on too, but it's not working. Okay. So tonight, we are happy to have Denver Holt give us a presentation on the owl of Montana. Denver is a wildlife researcher, biologist, and a world-renowned owl expert. He's founder and president of the Owl Research Institute and the Nine Pipes Wildlife Research Center, a nonprofit organization located in Charlo, Montana. As a dedicated field researcher, Denver believes that long-term field studies are the primary means to understanding trends in wildlife populations and key to wildlife and conservation management. Denver's been a leader in owl research, education, and conservation for over 30 years. While much of today's research is conducted remotely or using data, Denver's been unwavering in his commitment to boots-on-the-ground data collection. A classic hardcore field researcher, he has spent a lifetime in the field with wild owls, observing, recording, measuring, and enjoying the natural world. The resulting body of work and its implications to conservation is an incredible gift and legacy. He is responsible for some of the longest running studies of their kind in the world. And I could go on and on telling you about Denver, but that would take up too much of his time. So tonight he's going to talk to us about Montana owls, and hopefully we'll hear a little bit about a boreal owl project at Lost Trail Pass. Okay, Take it away, Denver.
Okay, so, all right, now I want to do share screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, there's my PowerPoint right there. Let's see if this works. And maybe try this.
Well, there we go.
Oh, shoot, that's working. All right, okay, so you can hear me now?
We can hear you, but let me repeat
Okay.
to everyone else, we don't want to hear anybody else. So everybody mute and stop your video.
Okay. All right. So anyway, it's been a long time since I've actually talked to a group in Western Montana. You know, I think I probably wore my welcome out with all the early talks, so I appreciate coming back here. Most of the time, it's out of the state anymore. Anyhow, I just, I know most everybody around here knows owls pretty well. So I'm just going to kind of go through a few things and tell you a little bit about our projects and, just a little bit about owls. The cover here was a children's book we did years ago, and I had a school teacher come on. We provided all the facts, and she put it into language people can understand. And, I have to admit this. We probably got more miles out of this children's book and 2 children's books on owls than any, scientific papers that I've ever written. So anyhow, I guess the thing is, what is it about owls? Clearly, owls are one of the most popular and admired groups of animals in the world. I mean, everywhere you go, everyone knows what an owl is. Every little child knows what an owl is. Whereas many other animals, they don't know what it is, whether it's a vole or a sparrow or a toad or something like that. So there's just something about owls that are very, very attractive, which makes them very popular throughout the world. I kind of think this. I kind of think it's, of course, what they look like, but, there's other things there. They have a big head, kind of like us. They've got a flat face, kind of like us. They have symmetry, with these large eyes and the nose and the mouth centrally located. Then you could stretch it a little bit and say, well, those feathers on the top of the head and the tufts that some species have kind of mimic the wild hairdos that we see today. So I think it's something about owls that they look like us, those big eyes, the symmetry, the flat face. But if you don't agree with that, it doesn't matter. They're still, some of the most popular and recognized groups of animals in the world. So right now we recognize about 268 species or so, and that changes all the time and kind of depends who's doing it. The molecular techniques have definitely diversified the number of species in the world. Sometimes, though, it's debatable if we really even should identify this or that as a species based on some of the molecular data. Nonetheless, we're currently recognizing about 268 species. And then every continent except Antarctica, every habitat you can imagine, and every habitat, let's see what else I want to say here. We have big owls like on the top here. Maybe my pointer will help. We have big owls such as eagle owls. We have small owls such as pygmy owls here. We have owls with tufts on their head. We have owls that are round-headed. We have owls with dark eyes, owls with yellow eyes, owls with red eyes. We have owls that nest on the ground, owls that nest underground. So quite a diversity of species in every habitat. And most of the concentration is usually right in, the tropics. That's the highest diversity of owls, as you would expect, because the greatest diversity of habitats. They eat almost anything from owls that are primarily insectivorous to owls that are primarily carnivorous, like the eagle owl types or great horns and snowies and things of that sort. But how do you find them? So this is, for me, the fun part of it, is how do you find them? So most of the time, owls are in inconspicuous locations trying to rest by day before their activity periods. With exception, but most of the time. So they're trying to rest by day, but we're trying to find them by day. And so given these inconspicuous locations and some other things, they can be rather difficult to find. But if you know a little bit about voice, we like to say that the big ones are hooters, the little ones are tooters, and trillers or whistlers. And so if you know a little about voice, a little about the breeding season. So they're trying to hide, as I say here. But if you know a little that, if you heard, then you would say, oh, that sounds like a hooter, and maybe you would recognize the call of the great, or the song of the great horned owl. let's see, it's moving. Let's just say you're somewhere along the Smith River camping or so. Would you detect this barn owl up in this little crevice here with this whitewash where it's pooped everywhere, but sitting in here? Or maybe at night you might hear shh, shh. So exceptions to the hooting and tooting whistling, in particular with the barn owl. So again, the thing about finding them is knowing a little about their breeding biology, knowing a little bit about their distribution, and you're becoming familiar with their primary songs, which are usually given most of the time during the onset of breeding. Another one here, you're in a little thickets, like, somewhere west of Missoula, you're down in a hawthorn and chokecherry thicket in the evening here. Would you see this hand-sized little owl here, the saw-whet owl? But if you heard, sounds like a truck backing up on and on and on, you might say, oh, well, I'm not sure what it is, but it sounds like a tutor, because I described him as a tutor. Then you would say, oh, it must be a small owl. Maybe you would get lucky enough to find them. So these are the things that I like so much about owls. So you got inconspicuous locations. Now let's bring in coloration and patterning. And so through the course of evolution in hiding by day, owls have evolved these colors and patterns that I like to say are kind of like the natural colors in a sense, the melanins and the porphyrins, the browns and the blacks and the tawny colors and the kind of banana colors or rusty colors and things like that, to further enhance, their crypticity or, hiding by day in inconspicuous location. But once again, if you knew the who cooks for you all, you'd say, oh, that's the hooter. Then you might go back and check, whatever you have for a music box to see what it is and identify it. Or some of you might already know that's who cooks for you all. But you can see here again, inconspicuous locations, coloration and patterning. If these big yellow eyes weren't staring right at you, you might just overlook this. So it's hard to find. But once again, if you know, perhaps the males and female great horned owls have different tones to their voices. Males with a deeper voice. Females with a higher pitched voice. And that's happening right now. We have our first nest this week in the Mission Valley that they're sitting in. They picked a splendid day to do it today, right in the middle of our blizzard. So, inconspicuous locations, coloration and patterning. Would you detect this long-eared owl sitting here? And if you look closely, you can just see through the course of evolution. Look at this back here. It could be bark. It could be flicks of light. It could be lichens. It could be raindrops. It could be snow. But hiding by day, coming out in the evening, but you know a little bit about the breeding season, a little bit about their vocalizations. And you too can find them. All right, now this, you're not going to see this color morph. This is one of my early days, one of the first owls I worked on back in the East. This is a red morph Eastern Screech Owl. February day, sunning in an apple tree, monitoring the thread as I walk on by and just sitting there. But if you knew a little bit about the vocalization, you might come back and check that cavity for nesting. Okay, so now let's bring in inconspicuous locations, coloration and patterning, and bring in behavior. If you look real closely here, this great horned owl is just split right down the center of its body. It's monitoring me, the threat, and just it's sitting there. They know that they're camouflaged. That's why they sit so tight. But if you get close and you're stumbling around, you don't know, I just happen to know this, then they employ behaviors which makes them a little more difficult to see. This whiskered screech owl down in the southwestern United States, tufts up, eyebrows up, changing the facial circular distance. So recognize an owl, eyes squinted, monitoring the threat. Here's another Eastern Screech Owl, tufts up here, eyebrows up, change the facial disc. And I put disruptive coloration in here. Eyes are open, bill is here, shoulders, feet, monitoring the threat. But if you knew a little bit about vocalizations, a little bit about habitat and breeding year, you might be able to find them. And not all owls are in trees. So this is a short-eared owl female on a nest. And this just mess of grasses here. How would you detect her? Well, you know a little bit about that they do a courtship flight where they fly around. The Mission Valley is a great place to see it in April or so. And the males get up there 500, 600 feet. and they dive and they wing clap. They pop their wings together like that, and we know that's going to be the area where their nest is going to be. There's a female on the ground, a lot to it nonetheless, and then we search those areas to go in and try to find them. And also remember too, they're not all found individually and or in pairs. So we have a few species which are, in the wintertime, we call them communal roosters. Long-eared owls and short-eared owls are the two classic species for that, where sometimes winter roosts can be the highest long-eared owl one we've had. I think it's 88 birds one year at one of our study sites here in the Mission Valley. And then last year we had over 400 short-eared owls in the valley in groups of 25 to 50 to 70. So you know a little bit about their breeding biology, a little bit about vocalizations, how to find them. The idea is to set up a survey or a survey method. So we have pretty standardized surveys. Almost all the surveys in the West are derived from the surveys that we established with boreal owls years ago. And so that's the idea. Set up your survey, have your routes, conduct your surveys, passive or playback. It kind of depends what you want to do. And then if you get, repeat vocalizations at one station, let's just say station number 5 or between 5 and 6, and you replicate your surveys, and the third survey, we like to have 3 replicates, and we keep hearing a long-eared owl at one, then it's time to go in and look. And the idea is to find a nest. All right. Then if you find a nest, and as long as it's being successful, so you got a good male, good female, good food resources, etc., then you can monitor that nest for whatever reason. We have research things that we do, or you could go in after it, and maybe you're a photographer, maybe just a nature enthusiast, maybe just like owls, whatever it is. So the surveys lead to finding the nests, and then you can kind of do a variety of things from there. So this is what it looks like here, up close and personal, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it as we do the Montana owls next. So let's just do the Montana owls. And as I might have said earlier, I hope I did, that North America, 19 species of owls currently recognized, may change a little bit with screech owls and pygmy owls, but nonetheless, about 19 species right now. And in Montana, 15 species, of which 14 species breed, which makes Montana the #1 state for the number of breeding species of owls. We're a big state, and we have a lot of habitats that probably contributes to it. So just to run through the Montana owls, I know you guys all know this, and maybe a few of you don't. Just remember, you always want to say round-headed or tufted, color of the eyes, color of the bill. All right, and I always like to say not every woodpecker with a red head is a red-headed woodpecker. So that's why it's important to get multiple field marks. And then just some of the things, barn owls aren't all that common. We found the first nest years ago. Actually, someone else found it, and over there in the Laurel area. And there's probably been many more nests than we've been able to locate. The Mission Valley is a pretty good spot for barn owls, and we have found a number of nests over the years and banded a number of chicks over the years. In fact, one of our nestlings that we banded was found 2 years later, hit by a car in Victor. So, but anyhow, barn owls, any barn owl information is good. I know you guys down there in that valley get a few from time to time. So, those are the barn owls. The flammulated owls, and right away you can see, again, tufts, color of the eyes, color of the bill. We have a study on flammulated owls. Actually, it was going for quite a number of years. It's kind of a difficult study. It's high up in the hills, and it's hard to get to and all that stuff. But we had Matt Seidenstecker do his master's thesis on it, and Matt Larson continued to do the monitoring. And we, the birds are what we call their obligate migrants, so they leave in the autumn and they come back in the spring, generally to the area which they bred the year before with some dispersal. Primarily insectivore, but there's increasing evidence that from time to time they'll eat a small mammal, a small bird, and even a bat. We don't have these guys. This is kind of neat here. This is the prairie version or the Montana version of the Eastern Screech Owl. So I showed you the red morph. Back in the east is usually the red and the gray morphs, which are pretty well known. But as you move out to the prairies, you can clearly see that there's no morphs out here, number one, but these have evolved to kind of be a prairie bird, mimic the colors of the trees at which they hang out in most. And so this is the Eastern Screech Owl of the prairies of Montana. Its vocalization, as you know, really a pretty vocalization. And you can tell it, tufts, colored eyes you can't see in the bill, cavity nester, so obligate cavity nester, natural or woodpecker holes. We're trying to do some surveys for the Eastern Screech Owl as well as the Western Screech Owl. So I have a student that's going to start that here soon. Again, we don't know much about it. We're trying to delineate the ranges between the Eastern Screech Owl, how far west does it go, and how far east does the Western Screech Owl go. And again, here's the Western Screech Owl. We used to think they were one species, when early naturalists and ornithologists ventured west. Both have tufts, both have yellow eyes, but this guy here is kind of a dark bill. The Eastern Screech Owl is kind of a greenish bill. The Eastern Screech Owl does this. The Western Screech Owl does this. And one of the things that we're interested in, now that you see this, is we're interested in the cavities at which they nest in. So I want to talk a lot about that. A lot of people put up nest boxes to do studies on owls. That's nice. But we're interested in the natural nest sites, comparing natural nest site information with cavities, and also measuring the natural cavities in order to tell the industry, firewood cutters, or whomever, private landowners, that natural cavities of dead and decaying trees are important to maintain. This is the long-eared owls. We just finished our 35th year on the long-eared owl. We've got, well over 2,000 birds marked. It's the longest study in North America, probably the world. It's a year-round study. We have a lot of information. I think now, after 35 years and 250 nests and enormous data set, we're going to start to write it up now. I'm a believer, as I was introduced, in long-term studies. I'm not a fan of these 1 to 3 season studies at all. And long-term studies, big data sets, and conducted by the same person. That's another thing very important, is conducted by the same person, because it takes time to become a good field researcher. So anyway, our long-eared owl study has been going on both the breeding and the non-breeding season. Some really interesting information, through mark recapture. We've done some genetic work as well. But with all of this said, pairs come together for a season, and then they break up. There's maybe site fidelity from time to time by males primarily, females on occasion, but never, ever has the male and female that bred in 1 year bred together in another year. Our great horned owls, we don't do really intensive studies on them. We've done some food habit analysis and stuff. I think when I'm about 80 or so is when I'm thinking that I might start a great horn study, get maybe another 10 or 15, 20 years out of it. But to give you an idea of how common they can be, a few years ago we had a survey in the valley, up here in the Mission Valley, and we found 54 nests. All right, so anybody want to do a study in great horns, it's a good species to get good samples on. Noel fowls. Okay, some of our other work here on pygmy owls, actually pretty cool. There's been some recent work out of Oregon. The guys done a pretty good job there on pygmy owls. We have about 25 years of data on these guys. And we have a heart surgeon, retired heart surgeon from the Missoula Heart Institute, who came on with us about 28, 29 years ago, and has taken the lead with the pygmy owls and discovered quite a bit of stuff here. And so we've been working on them again, getting natural sites. But one of the interesting things we're trying to figure out with these guys is the synchronous or the non-synchronous hatching. So being Bill Norton years ago published a paper where we thought all the eggs hatched in 1 day or 2 days for sure. Took a little flack for it. Some of the other people in Europe have said the same thing, while other people have said different. We recently have some videos of all the eggs hatching like within a day or so. So that's one of the big things we're working on. Steve is monitoring nests and looking at nest site characteristics in the breeding season. One of the other things that we did here with the pygmy owls was looking at the false eyes or the false face on the back of the head, whatever you want to call it, but this pattern of feathers and this coloration that mimics a face. So this is the back of the head. So I started many, many years ago at my feeder with some models, and then I had some undergraduate kids work on it, eventually a graduate student work on it. Make a long story short, when we put these models out, we try to control, but it's so hard to control in the wild, but we did the best we can. So when you put the model out without eyes on the back here, the chickadees and nuthatches and all the marvers come in, and They come in random directions and they kind of concentrate on the back where there's no false face or false eyes. And occasionally one might whack it in the back of the head. And then when we put the model out with the eyes and all that, again, they come in random directions, but then they all kind of gravitate towards the front, towards the real eyes. So the conclusions that we think are going on is this acts like maybe like a super stimulus, like it sees me, goes around front to the real eyes. And the pygmy owl can turn that into a hunting opportunity, monitor potential threats, etc. But, and you know, supposedly these to reduce attacks from behind by predators, but we've never seen that. But it doesn't mean it can't work for that as well as reducing mobbing. Pretty cool paper that we published on that. No Ferruginous pygmy owls. Solid owl here. We have 2 projects on this. Pretty cool. You know, this is the one again. Sounds like a truck backing up. We have our migration study, which we just finished our 10th year on. You know, it's a migration study. It's nothing super about it, you know. But we've been doing it at McClay Flats for a long time now. We've got 1,000 plus, maybe 1,500, 2,000 birds marked. And some of the results are actually kind of interesting. Some of the birds that we've marked there, one just showed up this year. We hadn't seen, I think, 5 years. And then, you know, people pick them up down the Bitterroot on Kate's study. They occasionally pick a bird or 2 of ours up. Down Lucky Peak in Idaho, they occasionally catch one of our birds. We've had a few birds up in Alberta and Saskatchewan that have gone up there, Vancouver. And then one, pretty interestingly, flew from the Missoula Valley over to Chico, California. That was kind of an interesting find. So that study. And then the other one, which I think, you know, for me is really a neat study, is the breeding season study. So as I said, you know, we do nest boxes, but nest boxes are biased. So what we've been trying to do over 25 years now is find natural sites. And so we have now found 66 natural sites of solid owls. We take a series of measurements data, a lot of measurements actually. And what we're trying to do is 2 things here. One is, you know, say, okay, hey, you know, these dead and decaying trees with woodpecker holes or natural holes in them are important. And we want to be able to tell, you know, the timber industry, the Forest Service, private landowners, hobbyists that have, you know, these trees in their backyards, don't cut them all down because they're important for a lot of things, including solid owls. So now, again, we have a pretty good data set at 66 natural sites. Then the other thing we want to do, most data on solid owl population ecology comes from nest box studies. Again, it's a convenience, you know, and I can understand why we do it. But we want to start making comparisons of number of eggs laid, number of chicks surviving, number of chicks fledged from natural sites with nest boxes. And then the other thing, too, is nest boxes, as I'll tell you next, you know, they're kind of, you know, they're not like randomly placed. You know, there's always like a pattern to them and stuff like that. So they maybe don't mimic the natural nest sites in the wild. And so, and this is our boreal owl. So I wish we had more natural nest sites and boreals. And so, you know, John Ormison asked me to expand a little bit when I got here on some of our work. So we now have been working on boreals 24 years or something, 25 years, something like that. And most of the work has been, you know, Lost Trail, Chief Joseph Passes. We don't tell anyone where the boxes are, but everybody finds them. And so, you know, some of the things we found 47 nesting attempts. Now we've banded 130 or so nestlings and, you know, about 30 females and very few males. But it is a nest box study. The Forest Service put these up years ago, and, you know, they apparently, you know, the people lost interest and all that. So, but we've been doing it for 24, 25 years, monitoring it. And so we've got some cool stuff. You know, just recently we just had a paper accepted on looking at site fidelity in natal phyllopatry. So females coming back to the same area to breed and young females coming back to the same area to breed, you know, within a kilometer or 2 of their natal nest, and then actually back in their natal box, stuff like that. Interesting information. I wish we had more natural sites. We really need to. That's requires hard work, which is probably why everybody puts boxes up, and you can understand that. So pretty neat stuff. We got some food habit stuff that we're going to be looking at. Actually, one of these ones, they had a pika in it recently. We're just trying to figure out where the heck they got the pika up there at Lost Trail. So, and then we got some, you know, incubation stuff, some clutch size stuff, some body mass of, you know, breeding females, things of that sort. Some papers getting ready to come out. Hawk owls, we had 25 years of data on hawk owls, mostly from Glacier National Park. Same thing as always, work your butt off, try to find natural sites. I think we had 37 nesting attempts that we recorded, banded, 70 or so hawk owls, adults and young over the years. Only one hawk owl did we ever recapture. It was a nestling. We captured her, 5 years later, a kilometer or 2 or 3 from its natal nest. But anyway, it turned out to be one of the more comprehensive hawk owl studies in the U.S. and Canada. So anyway, we're not doing it anymore. It's a very, very difficult study, and you can understand why people don't want to do it. It was in Glacier Park, so it was all snowshoeing and cross-country skis. I had a super crew. I did a little bit of it. They did all the hard work. Burrowing owl studies in Montana. We've done a little bit of food habits work on burrowing owls over in the Billings area in years past. Most recently, we're doing work related to wind farms and burrowing owls, contracted to do some of this work here. One of the things, which is they get killed a lot by wind farms, by the way. But anyway, so it's our job just to go in and do some monitoring and not make any conclusions other than provide data. The burrowing owl, we're going to talk about this and these other open country species, long-eared owl, short-eared owl, snowy owl. And I'll show you some information that people believe based on 1970, 2014 or 15, published in 2016, that its populations in the U.S. and Canada have declined by 34%. So, 64%, excuse me, 64% decline those years. But I want to talk about that a little bit later here. Short-eared owl, I've worked on short-eared owls off and on for 40 years. I started my early research in Massachusetts on them. And this is, one of those species like snowy owls, like long-eared owls. If there's a high vole population, there's a big number of them around. If there's a low population, most vacate the area. The Mission Valley is pretty unique as far as I can tell throughout the West. And we always have a fair number of short-eared owls around. And they breed almost every year. Right now, Beth Mendelson, our biologist, has taken over the short-eared owl project, and she's particularly interested in trying to evaluate predation events. Last year, every nest we found, which wasn't that many, but were all preyed upon by something. We don't know yet, and we're going to try to figure that out this year. This is another species whose populations are believed to decline by like 65% between 1970 and 2014 or so. And this is one of those species where you guys can come up to the Mission Valley, and I don't know what it's like in the Bitterroot Valley, but wherever you have knee-deep grasslands, you can go out there and see the courtship flights in April, which is a very unique aspect of any owl's behavior, these courtship flights. We have a student right now working on, she's trying to draw the tangent lines between an area where the birds are doing their courtship flights, an area where she's recording it, and we're using GPS and compass and a few other things to try to estimate the height or get it to a little tighter estimate than what we've done before. So we're working on that. It's actually pretty promising, but the birds aren't always as cooperative as you would hope. Just to mention here, spotted owls were first reported in Montana in the Fort Tyne area in the 20s, in Glacier National Park in the 20s, and even in the 50s, some people reported spotted owls in the Glacier National Park. There's no spotted owls in Montana, nor are there any in Idaho, and there never have been. And so what we believe is that the barred owl movement into the Pacific Northwest started in the 20s, and probably Glacier National Park in Northwest Montana was the first year where they dropped in. And so we have some stuff along with the Eastern Screech Owl and Western Screech Owl surveys going on. We have a student that's going to start doing barred owl surveys east of the divide. They clearly have populated, throughout the state of Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, Northern California, etc. They seem to be very, very adaptable. I'm not so sure that their distribution, movement, increase, etc., is the result of us, which is some people suggest maybe they're just a pretty adaptable species, and we're going to come whether the habitat's been modified or whether it wasn't. They seem to be pretty adaptable. This is one who cooks you all, etc. And great gray owl, I've accumulated probably data on 50 or more nests over the years, but we started a formal study about 3 years ago. Beth's heading that up. And among their breeding biology, one of the things we're interested in, again, just like the saw-whets and the pygmies and the screech owls and all the obligate cavity nesters, we're interested in the snags that great gray owls utilize for their nesting. So we've got information out to the public. If you find a nest, if you don't want us to know where it is, that's fine. Will you fill out a form here, because we want to be able to provide, because when they do nest in snags, they tend to be pretty big. And a big dead snag with a broken top on it can be hard to find. And so we want to be able to provide, the Forest Service, the timber industry, private landowners, et cetera, with data in order to, keep some of these snags for a species like great grays. Not that they can't nest in an old hawk nest or mistletoe or something like that, but over time, it seems like this might have been a preferred nest site, is big broken top trees like this. And then our winter visitor, making out the 15 species of owls that occur in Montana, is the snowy owl. This year we're having an eruption year throughout, particularly the east. It seems to be pretty consistent, the Great Lakes region and over to northeast United States when they do occur. And so we get a few. There's been a few in the Mission Valley, a few in the Kalispell area. I'm not sure about the Bitterroot. Do you guys ever get them down there? I hear about it, but not 100% so I don't know, maybe you can enlighten me on that. But this is your typical breeding female. I leave tomorrow actually to go up to the Arctic, look for these guys in the winter. We're doing a film on, the 30 years of research on snowy owls up there. And so they want me to go up and stand and freeze my butt off in 20 below zero weather to look for snowy owls that might not be there. So I do that tomorrow. But this is your typical female. Now look at the white base pattern, and then with all the bars and spots on it. And this is your adult male. And you can see it almost entirely pure white, fluorescent white, if you will. So we recently just have a paper accepted for publication where we discuss the evolution of the color white, which would make sense, right? If you're going to live in a snow-covered environment, that you would probably evolve the color white to match environment that you spend most of your time in, which is snow-covered. Even on the winter grounds, most of the areas where they winter have snow much of the year, if not most of the year. But then again, why be like this? So young males look like females, maybe a little more heavy, but young females look like females, maybe a little more heavily marked. But adult males look like this, taking probably 4 or more years to do that. So the other part of the manuscript that we just had accepted is, why have snowy owls evolved sexual color dimorphism, with females being like this and males being like that? One of the things we come to, we definitely think it's all about sexual selection. 24 hours of light, other species of owls don't really have that. 24 hours of light, an open tundra, no trees, et cetera, where we think vision is more important, social communication, than hooting, although both does occur. And so that's what we think is going on. That, and reasons to support this are that young males who look like females do not breed in our study area. So 30 years now, 284 nests, you never see a young male that kind of looks like this breed. They hang out in bachelor groups or by themselves. They never really have territories. Only birds that are bright white have territories. Only birds that are bright white breed. So what we think is going on is females are choosing older white males with resources, and we've got the data to support that. It kind of neat. We can go on and on with that. It's a long paper, but that's that. And then I wanted to share this with you here. This was between 1970 and 2014. And these are some of the population estimates. And, they say barn owls increased by 48%. There isn't one barn owl researcher I know who believes barn owls have increased in any area through the distribution in the United States. And then you look at here, Eastern Screech Owls down 41%, Great Horned Owls down 27%. And these are the population estimates. So then they come up with 3,900,000. Snowy owls down 64%. Let's go to the other open country species. Long-eared owls down 91%, short-eared owls down 65%. Is this data true? So I've got some updated information since then, but this is what I want to use. And when I'm trying to address this, is who came up with this data, which we know, BBC primarily and a few other groups. How do they come up with this data? And we know that the surveys for owls are not, the BBS, whatever, the breeding bird survey stuff, it's not conducive to picking up owls. So how the heck do we come up with these numbers? So I don't really believe much of these. You might believe the elf owl, not the elf owl, where's the Frugens pygmy. You might believe that because it's this really restricted distribution in the United States, but they're very, very common, south of that. So that's what we're trying to do with a lot of these species is figure out, how do you come up with these numbers? I know the snowy owl, for example, has gone from 290,000 back in 2013, one of the estimates, to 30,000 now. How does that happen? So anyway, these are some of the things that we're working on. I frankly think this is just a lot of mathematics without, any meat behind it. So anyway, so think of this. Set up your surveys, all right? You get a survey route. You make them, 400 meters apart, whatever, quarter mile apart. You do your surveys. You replicate your surveys 3 times. You get an owl calling at survey station number 5. Consistently, you say, all right, it's time to go in and look for them. And so we found whitewash and pellets, and we hung out in here for a long period of time. Thanks very much. I don't know if there's any questions. I hope that was worthwhile to you. So what do I do now?
Oh, well, hold on here. Let me move all these things around. I had asked people to put questions in the chat box, and I'm not sure what we've got here.
Should I get rid of
What is the name of the?
Or are you going to read them to me?
Well, you can get rid of the stop share if you'd like and read them. And people need to type some more in there. I see a question about the Snowy Owl film.
Okay.
What the name was.
I don't know what the name of this one coming up is. We're doing 2 of them. We just, I worked on Frozen Planet years ago, and now they're doing Frozen Planet 2, and COVID kind of screwed that up. So this year we worked with the film crew. The BBC is a long story, but Attenborough is going to narrate this piece, and they wanted a very specific part of the Snowy Owl life history, and we just finished some of the editing process the other day. So that was that. And then the other one is a pilot with the Explorers Club out of New York that we're doing for a potential series on, snowy owls and other owls in general. So, and then we've done a bunch of the others. I don't even keep track of them anymore.
A series on owls, that would be fun. Do you see the question someone asked, are barn owls increasing in Montana?
Yeah, I didn't see the question. You'll have to read it to me. I can't tell you that. All I can say is we see fluctuations here in the Mission Valley, but I think if a person was to really spend time, they could find barn owls nesting maybe every year here. And there's a little area in the southeast corner, we call Amishville, and it's the Amish community. And that community, maybe it's because of their agricultural practices, that tends to be where we find most of the barn owls. In old buildings down in the Amish community. Now, excuse me. There's other areas too. We find them in cliffs as well, as you saw on that one. So, usually it's a cliff where there's a juniper tree or a ponderosa pine tree high above it. For some reason, the root system kind of erodes, and these pretty large cavities appear, and the owls will go and nest in those cavities. So, they're around. I can't say anything about increasing, decreasing. We just don't find enough of them, but we do find them.
John Ormiston was telling you that he only remembers one report from the 60s or 70s of a snowy owl in the Bitterroot. So...
All right. Well, did you see it, John? Or did anyone get a photo of it? Not that I doubt that it occurred.
Did you see it, John?
Oh, he's probably muted. It's okay.
Okay. Well,
hey, Zetterberg, I see you. All right. One of my good friends is tuned in.
Oh, good. John said it was seen by Bob Daniels.
Oh, that's exciting.
We have a question about from Kate about guidelines for owl photographers.
Yeah, actually, it's funny that just this morning I sent guidelines out to Beth because she was asked about that. And so we do have a series of guidelines. What we did, and it all stemmed from the snowy owl research because filmmakers, photographers, everybody wants to go out there and chase snowy owls. And so we brought in Dan Cox out of Bozeman, who's professional photographer and he's been the cover of 70 magazines, including Twice Geographic. And we went out to the blinds and we kind of set up a distance thing for snowy owls. And so there's a lot of basics to it. One of the important things, Kate, is, make sure everyone has the right equipment. And if you have the right equipment, you don't have to be very close to them. Everyone wants to get that eye shot, but so we've set up a series, or just to set up this, what I call a protocol. And I'd be happy to send it to you. But basically it's like, if you have good equipment, you have a blind, and you can keep your distance to them. I know, we kind of got driven out of McClay Flats to the great gray owls once the photographers came in. We're even afraid to go there anymore and do our work because, but I don't watch them. Beth has watched them down there, and she said most of them are pretty ethical and stuff like that. But yeah, there should be some guidelines to it, and that people should adhere to, and you shouldn't be flushing them around. I'm not crazy on baiting either, to be honest. That's how people like to get flight shots and like to get them coming in and catching, lab mice and things of that sort. So we have some guidelines, and you can kind of modify that to meet your needs that we can certainly send you.
If you want to send them to me, I can pass them on, and
Sure.
maybe we'll even have an article about ethical bird photography in general, and then some specifics for things like owls. So.
Yeah, and as photographers, again, most of them have been great over the years that we've worked with. We've worked with tons of them, and they ask a good, gotcha question back to us. What about you guys? You go in, you catch them, you ban them, you harass them. I mean, that's true. We do that. I mean, we do have permits, and we have passed tests in a sense in order to do that. But that's legitimate, and I have to defend that as well. So they have a legitimate argument there. Whether you wanted all photographers to go through some kind of certification, I don't think they would go for that. But we had to go through certification in order to trap and ban and do the things that we do for research.
Mm-hmm. Good, thank you. Van asked, is lead poisoning a significant issue in owl population declines, or is it mostly habitat loss?
Yeah, I generally speaking, and I haven't looked at that issue in a long time, but generally speaking, it's more of a diurnal bird of prey issue, whether it's eagles and falcons and things of that sort. The owls feed primarily on small mammals, so you don't get a lot of lead in small mammals. Now, for those species that occasionally maybe a great horned or a snowy will feed on a dead deer or carcass from time to time, but we just don't see that in most of the owl species. And so I can't speak for all of them. I can just tell you what I know here. And I talk to my good friend, Rob Dominich all the time about that. And it just doesn't seem to be important in owls.
That's good. But habitat loss is, I bet.
Oh, yeah, habitat. Sorry about that. Yeah, habitat loss, I think that's the $1 million thing for everything, is habitat loss. You have to have research in order to argue for habitat preservation. But, if you could just protect big, huge tracts of land, it would be great for everything. Like the Arctic in a sense, the Arctic Wildlife Refuge is enormous, and things just kind of do what they do up in there. But, in other areas like Western Montana here, where everybody wants habitat for one thing or another, then you have to have data in order to, conserve habitat. But habitat is definitely the issue. And that's one of those things, even specific things like those nest sites that I'm talking about, really, really important. Something that you wouldn't think about, just dead trees, how important they are for not only, cavity nesting owls, but many other species of birds, reptiles, amphibians, insects, etc.
Great. Well, Judy tells us that there was a barn owl nest in a barn somewhere near Corvallis down here. So that's good to know.
Yeah, I think I went to that barn, actually. That was a long time ago, Judy, if I remember.
Okay, now here's something about short-eared owl's habitat was flooded out, so I only saw one. Will this inhibit them from returning in the future?
Oh, I don't know. I've never had short-eared owl habitat flooded out, I guess. Usually they're on the drier, even though it's grasslands, they're on the drier sites. As long as the habitat, I would say, that the following year, as long as the habitat's dry and the grasses are, knee deep because they need cover, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be back. But, it's also a lemming thing as well. So, or no, voles for those guys. So if you have good vole populations, they'll be back.
Good, thank you. Alex Carney says a more accurate survey would last how long? Could you go into more detail about how you do the surveys?
Yeah, what we do is, first of all, my opinion now, I've been doing this a long time. There's no such thing as random. So anyway, select a survey route, and usually, I would say we're lazy, but we don't want to go hiking through the woods, and on snowshoes and cross-country skis. We want things to be easy. So we usually choose roads. And then, all right, so that's not random. But anyway, so let's just say you choose a road, you choose a trail system or whatever. Then what we do is we set it up where each survey point it depends on the species too, but each survey point is about, can be from 400 meters to 800 meters. So a quarter mile to a half a mile, depending on the species. And then we have a protocol for each one. So you start your survey, like you have 10 stations along your survey route. And you wait for dusk. Right, so the first one is the hardest one, when is it time? So you might say, okay, we'll follow the sunset chart. Okay, the sunset chart is here. And then you start your survey. So we do a series of listening, playing callback, listening, playing callback for 10 minutes. 8 minutes can work, but 10 minutes is a lot easier mathematically to work with. And so we do 10 minutes per station. And again, listening, playing, then moving on to your next survey station. And you can bite off more than you can chew. It's so easy to do that. I mean, to do surveys at night, to go a couple miles, it takes you a while, and record all of the data. Then we have data sheets, the cloud cover, noise, wind speed, things of that sort. We do have a pretty extensive manuscript right now. I've been working on it for like 5 years, and it's close on survey methodology, trying to standardize it for North American owls. The problem is you can standardize it, but you still have to have some kind of specific protocol for each species, because it's always a little bit different for each species.
Thank you.
And we can talk more about that if anybody wanted to.
Well, we've got a lot of questions here.
Sure, as long as I'm okay.
Lisa from Illinois.
Cool, Illinois. All right.
Yeah, and she's wondering about, she lives in Illinois. She sees Facebook groups of people seeing snowy owls in Wisconsin, and she wonders what other states see them this time of year. But a lot of states in the East do this year, right?
Yeah,
I know Ohio
in the northeastern United States. So is there a question?
She just wondered about other states. Do they show up in other states? Yeah.
I mean, there's been a number. I mean, Montana's seen them, but it usually tends to be the Great Lakes region to the northeast United States. We have, big eruptions. We call them eruptions, and they tend to be young of the year. I'll just digress a little bit for you. They tend to be young of the year, 5 to 6 months old. So some of the information coming out today says, oh my gosh, they're not all starving. We've just discovered that, but that's not true. All right. If you look back, the early ornithologists and the early naturalists in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, they had the same questions we have today about this. Who are these birds? Are they all going to die? Where did they come from? And all that stuff. And they proposed, two things, right? One is, a lot of them are going to die. But then some of the early ornithologists said, wait a minute, if they're all young of the year, 90% of what we see are 5 to 6 months old. We know that from their plumages. Then they must have had a good breeding year. So somewhere in the Arctic, lemmings must have been very, very plentiful. And these guys in the 30s and 40s, yeah, they don't really get the credit they deserve for proposing that, and so we do know that. And then 2008, this guy in the corner that says Nicky Montesano right there, that guy, him and I published a paper in 2008 on the snowy owl eruption migration to the Mission Valley. And we proposed in there that during these eruptions, up to 5 more young per nest can fledge than during a year when there's not many lemmings. And that would kind of be the result of big, huge numbers that we see if you had 500 snowy owl nests, 1,000 snowy owl nests somewhere, all that stuff. So anyway, they're primarily not starving, although some do. They're young of the year, 5 to 6 months old. They had a good breeding season. Lemmings were abundant somewhere. We don't always know where they came from.
Okay, thank you. We've had a couple comments about rodenticides. Unlike the lead, maybe the rodenticides are very dangerous for owls?
They can be, and I can just recite laboratory experiments. It's hard to know because you just don't always find them. Every once in a while we'll find an owl, we'll try to send it in, but it seems like we never get it in time before tissue breaks down. But they do some laboratory kind of weird experiments looking at rodenticides, and they say, oh yeah, we gave the screech owls, mice tainted with this or that, and they died. And we did this and that, and they recovered. And so over in Logan Airport in Boston, where Norman Smith does a lot of the winter snowy owl work there, they poison rats. And so they have gotten a number of snowy owls in that have been fed on rats that they poisoned. And so there's some concern about that. On a large scale, I just can't tell you because the data is hard to get. And very often these things just die and are never found.
All right. Kate says that there were 2 saw-whet owls die from rodenticides in a chicken coop not too far from here in January.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, I do. Now that you mentioned that, I do remember that.
Okay, let's see. A lot of people are talking about these things. Let's see. Large snags. This is Van. Large snags are much more rare on our public lands than large live trees. They're so valuable. They're often removed during timber sales because they're considered hazard trees. They really need to be retained.
Yeah, and that is definitely the case. And I understand. I know friends who have been in the logging industry. They do talk about safety measures. They do talk about disease, and then there's also firewood cutting. Up here where I live on the res, it's hard to find a big old dead tree, because most of them are cut for firewood. And so there's a lot that goes on there. And so I think it's more of a public information thing. I think most people would be willing to save a few snags if they just had a little more information on how important they are to, a variety of wildlife species. But big ones are tough to find, for sure.
Right, and there are standards on, like the forest, the national forest, they do have standards about snag retention, I believe, but that doesn't mean it always happens.
Yeah, and so back when I, started this early on, and, Raleigh McClellan was one of my professors way back when, and he was doing pileated woodpecker stuff, and he got the Forest Service and others to care about big old snags for pileated woodpeckers. And that was great. That was great. But kind of what ensued is we tended to save just a big old tree with pileated woodpecker holes in it. But when we do our work and we measure all this stuff, for example, we find, and we have the data to support it, that, all right, a pileated woodpecker hole is good for saw-whet owl, but pygmy owls don't use them. They use a totally different type of snag with very, very small, often, sapsucker holes or hairy woodpecker holes, or a natural hole where a branch broke off and rotted inside. So we have to go beyond just, saving one big tree with a bunch of pileated woodpecker holes is great for everything. And then realize that a variety of snags is really, really important for everything.
Well, that's a really good point. Variety. I think a lot of the chat box are people trying to direct the woman from Illinois on how she can find snowy owls. Here's something from Diane.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, Diane. Hi, Denver. How do you think the Trail Creek fire will affect the boreals at Chief Joe? Timber sales along Trail Creek are going on.
Hi, Diane. Good to hear from you. Hope you're doing well. I always mean to get you when I get out there, but I never do. Sorry about that. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I guess I would have to go in and see. I'm not sure the elevation there. To be honest with you, when you get up to the top of the passes, that seems to be what the boreals like. Kind of like that rolling top of the hills up in there, versus any slope. So I don't know. And we're shy on the data for boreal owls for natural nest sites. I mean, that's something we haven't done. And it's just so much easier to check nest boxes. And that just, it takes a lot of work to find the natural nest sites. So there's only been one study that's found, a few natural nest sites, and that was in Idaho. Greg Hayward and his wife did some pretty good work back in the wilderness area. They found like 16 nests, all natural snags, and got some good measurement data. You have to do that. So I don't know. I honestly don't know anything about the logging that's going on there. I know that they did go in and cut a bunch of our trees that had boxes on them up there at Lost Trail. I mean, they cut those trees down. Sure looked intentional. They were right along the road.
Oh dear. Let's see. Did I miss anything? If I missed your question, you might unmute yourself and ask it. So
Hey,
that
Nikki, I can see you now.
me or Nikki?
No, my
Oh,
friend
this guy.
Nikki and Steve from Sandy Nation.
Oh, okay. Oh dear, we've got somebody wanting to enter the waiting room now. No, it's a little late for that. Anyway, if there are no more questions, I think we'll let Denver go. He's got a trip tomorrow, it sounds like, but
Yes.
I can't tell you, we had a wonderful time, and we've gotten a lot of really great information from you tonight. Thank you so
Well,
much.
Yeah, I hope it was worthwhile. You never know. I know everybody knows everything about owls anymore, and so it's hard to give new information. So hope it was worthwhile for everybody.
Thank
Oh,
you.
no, I think we got a lot of good information. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, you guys. I'm gonna
Getting
log
a
out
lot of thank yous.
right.
Getting a lot of
Hey,
thank yous.
Go to our website, you guys. Support owl research. Thank you.
Thanks, Denver.
Thank you, Denver. Have a great trip to the north.
Thanks, John. Take care. Thanks for getting me involved in this.
Dress warm.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Good night, everyone. See you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.